Hello and welcome to India Retail Network. We are starting a new podcast series where industry leaders and experts help us unpack and decode opportunities and complexities of India's dynamic retail landscape. And today we have Adarsh Menon with us. Adarsh is the partner for Fireside Ventures. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Adarsh.
Thank you, Rasool. Thanks on.
Others, you have a very extensive experience, working from companies HUL, Flipkart, Standard Chartered, Speedclimb, Beecham, Healthcare, Zoom Cars. Looking at it, it seems like you have covered everything. Is there any aspect of the consumer segment that you haven't explored or haven't touched so far?
I think very much tip of the iceberg, Rasool. Long way to go.
Okay. What are the things that you would be watching out for? Like, is there any other interesting segment?
I think there's just a lot of action happening in the Indian consumer space, right? So be it India 1, which is, let's say elite and affluent India, or India 2, which is Bharat, or indeed rural India. As a consistent trend, what we are seeing is aspiration and affordability. Both are increasing. Access, though, is not increasing at the same pace.
Okay.
Right. So what I've seen from the last 20 years to now is that India continues to be a supply starved market.
Right.
Which means there is a lot of space even today for new age brands to enter and service consumer needs, which are definitely far more amplified and far more sharper than what they were 20 years back. I think the way the Indian demographic is transforming, the way the country is getting more affluent, the way the consumer herself is getting younger, all of that just presents a lot of opportunity for new age consumer brands to get built. And certainly this opportunity is something that's going to continue for the next many years and decades. So like I said, very much the tip of the iceberg and a long way to go.
Right. And since your inception in 2018, and in the span of 8 years, you have invested in 54 companies, 54 brands. Some people would term it very aggressive. How would you sum it up?
I'd say still a long way to go.
Right.
Long way to go. So see, we are long-term believers in the India consumption story, right? So as a venture capital firm, we invest in new age, India-based consumer brands that are looking to solve specific niches in India, right? Now that could be a niche which is relevant for urban India, for kids' food, or that could be a niche which is relevant for rural India, for everything in general. And then everything in the middle, right? So be it home care, be it fashion, be it personal care, be it clothing, be it appliances, be it anything to do with your home, or be it platforms. I think anything where the India consumption story comes in or where the Indian consumer comes in, we are very excited about that space.
Right.
The way we try to do it is we write extensive theses, which are all consumer based. So at any point in time, inside the firm, we'll have 35, 40 active thesis areas. And then once our thesis is sound and we have conviction that the thesis is good enough, then through a combination of inbound and outbound, we find and we work with and we nurture entrepreneurs' businesses that are building towards those thesis areas.
How hard or difficult is it to find this kind of companies? You would be looking at hundreds of ideas, and how do you pick the winner? You have some of the winners already, Mamaearth, Boat, or Sleep Company, and dozens of emerging companies. How do you keep try to find the winning combination?
I think today we are at a place where we look at about 200 odd, quote unquote deals every month.
Wow.
So that's several more than, 5, 10 a day.
Right.
That's the pace. I think what's happened over the last 8 years, Rasun, is, we built a brand, right?
Yeah.
We built a brand and a fair amount of deals that we get are inbound. So somebody who's building a consumer brand in India, we'd like to think that they would think of us, that we want them to think of us. And we want them to approach us and talk to us and, and together.
You'll be one of the first port of calls, right?
Exactly. When a young brand, consumer brand, wants to raise their first institutional check, we definitely want them to reach out to us, right? So we get a fair amount of, most of our, deal flow, as we call it, is inbound.
Right.
Because over a period of time, we built that reputation of being a consumer-focused venture fund. And then we also have people who do a lot of outbound, right? So we have people who are in the market, we have people who talk to entrepreneurs, we have people who talk to several state-level institutions to get deal flow from there. So about 200 odd deals we see every month. And then through a combination of our thesis work and experience built up over the years, we choose our investments.
Right.
We'd like to be quite focused in the consumer space because we believe that's what we understand. We believe that's what we do well. The combined experience of everybody in the team is actually quite strong in that space. And the really good thing is that space is massive, right? You're talking in the next 5 years, just India consumption is likely to be close to 4 trillion, right? That's bigger than the size of the GDP today. And the way
Just areas the consumption.
just consumption, right? And the way this consumption will change in the next 5 years is something that will just create a space for so many new age brands to get created. And we want to be right there at the forefront, partnering with these brands, identifying them to start with, to your question, and then nurturing and working with them to, to grow to the next step.
Right. Then brings me to the next question. You touched upon it in the beginning. And Kishore, we are used to classify India into India 1, India 2, India 3, and play. Similarly, in this Valley report, you also do extensive research. What is your classification of India
Right.
into different categories?
Right. So if you look at an income classification, really that's a pretty safe way to start. So you can look at India as four very clear income cohorts. So there is what we call elite India that earns anywhere between 12K to 24K USD per annum. Then there is the affluent India, right, which is anybody who earns between over 24K per annum.
Okay.
Then there's affluent India.
That could be the best of the world, right? Among the best, yeah. Right.
Absolutely. Then there's affluent India, which is anywhere between 12K to 24K per annum. These two put together is what we call India 1, right, which is largely affluent and elite India. Then we have India 2 or Bharat as we call it, right? These are aspirers. These are anywhere between 6K to 12K, right? So what you could call it middle class India. And then there are people who are earning less than 6K per annum, which are strugglers, right? So that's an income sort of classification that we do. This is all per household. If you look at elite India, that is about, as we said, about 12 million households. Affluent India has about 30 million households.
And these segments could consume everything, Netflix to Starbucks to everything, right?
So if you
How is this segment growing particular segment?
So this consumption, this number is about 42 million households. So we think in the next 5 years, this number will go up to 65 million households.
Wow.
Now here's a really cool thing, Rasul. So 42 million households, which is India 1, they today have an average income of more than 15,000 USD, which by World Bank definitions is a rich country in itself.
Country in itself, right?
Rich country in itself.
Where would it come? Where would it rank if it was termed as a country?
This would be the 10th largest country in the world by population. So this is just India 1. All right.
Okay.
And the way India 1 will grow in the next 5 years, this 42 million households will become 65 million households, which is approximately 240, 250 million people, which is the 7th largest country by population.
Oh,
So here you have India 1, which by itself is, a very large country on the global scale. And by World Bank definitions, a rich country. This entire cohort or this entire sort of, one country within the larger India, if you just look at who these consumers are, they are traveled globally, right? So they have access to all kinds of global brands and some of that most of that you don't get in India. These are people who read back of pack, right? These are people who want clean label products. There is a rapid growth over here of people demonstrating what we call for me behavior, which means if we could be all living in the same household, part of the same family,
becoming more individual. Sorry,
what I want could be very different from what you want, and I'm not afraid to go and purchase that product and use it. Obviously, affordability is not a problem here. So these are people who are very comfortable with premiumizing, and an increasing trend of people preferring products or brands that have very deep-rooted sustainability values, right? Recycled plastic.
Even that is an issue, right?
Even that's something which these consumers are very happy to pay for, and these are actually influencing brand choices as well. So this is just a very, very large opportunity in itself, demonstrating behaviors which are very similar to what a household in Singapore or what a household, like you said, in Qatar, etc., could demonstrate. Affordability is not a problem. Increasing demonstration of for me, clean label, healthy, sustainable, all of these behaviors are now relevant. So if a brand or a bunch of brands builds keeping this cohort in mind, it is a very big market in itself.
And the accessibility is getting created.
Right. These consumers are
In the right proportion or
I would say catching up. So even today, there are many, 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 many need gaps that brands available in India don't fulfill, right? Even to India 1, right? Even today, which is where the opportunity for new age brands to enter, new age brands to create themselves, very big businesses just for this cohort are just very, very large, right? As you can imagine. And we are seeing a lot of brands and a lot of entrepreneurs do that. For example, it's a very, now, in retrospect, it sounds very intuitive. But if you think 5 years back or 10 years back or 15 years back, you've always had beauty and personal care products for babies and toddlers. And you've always had beauty and personal care products for adults. Yeah. Right? But the moment a child becomes 5, 8, 11, they're still using either toddler products or adult.
Right.
But the reality is their skin is neither that of a toddler, neither that of an adult.
So there was no choice in between.
There's no choice. Yeah, there was a demand gap. Mothers felt, we want something for an 8-year-old girl. Neither can she use my product nor what she uses in a toddler.
Now you have a product.
Yes.
Do you have a company in that portfolio?
Yes, I'm a company called Duco Kids. Right? That is basically beauty and personal care for children. Right? For the longest time, people have believed and the mothers have wanted to feed children healthy food. Healthy food daily, healthy food for snacks, right? But what was available 10 years back? It was either fried, it was full of maida, there was palm oil, preservatives, right? Tasty for sure, but definitely not healthy. But today, the demand has always been there. But now there are brands, there are entrepreneurs who are building businesses and beautiful, beautiful brands and products which both fulfill taste as well as fulfill health. So this phenomenon is, while it isn't, you can say it's in India one phenomenon, the reality is, as you go to India, do which in Bharat, the requirement is actually exactly the same. Like a mother in a middle-class Indian household, which is a Bharat household, she has the same aspiration, right? She might not have the same level of affordability.
Yeah, and accessibility to an extent.
What's happened through e-commerce is that a lot of the access problem has been sorted, but she might not have brands that fulfill, what her pocket can afford all the time. So what they're doing, it's a beautiful insight, right? What they're doing is they are substituting the age-old unhealthy food in this case with small consumption occasions which are shifting to what is healthier, right? So if a child was eating unhealthy, let's say noodles, twice a week, now that is becoming maybe once a week, and that once a week is getting substituted with something better. We believe that as this household starts earning more, even that once a week will be a substitute. There is an upgradation that's happening. There is an expression of aspiration. There's an expression of need, which is clean label, expression of need, which is better for the environment. All of that is happening. And when we see trends like this and we see it across multiple categories inside the household, that's what gives us the confidence that there is just a lot of action yet to happen, on the consumer front.
Right. And you have already invested in 54 companies. You have something like 3,000 crores under your management, and you're raising a new fund of $230 million, right? That's right. Would you stick to consumer? The space is too huge, and that will keep you busy for I don't know how many more decades. This will also go into consumer. And is there any particular segment you're targeting with this fund, or
You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. So we want to continue remaining investors in the consumer story because, like you're saying, there is just so much of opportunity there, and we don't think even we've scratched the surface. For example, Rasul, we've not even spoken about rural. Yeah, they're right. We spoke about India, and Bharat. The reality is that 70% of India lives in rural India.
And you're doing one interesting. You have funded one interesting company, Rosanna.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
So Rosanna is a company that does rural e-commerce, right? Which is targeting rural India.
Now there's an e-commerce for rural, particular
e-commerce for rural India. Okay, this is villages that have a population of 3,000. So really small rural India, where three things have happened. One is affordability has increased because obviously there is more prosperity. The government also has been spending on this area. There's a lot of repatriation that happens from urban back to rural. Right. So these households have definitely become more prosperous. Number two, thanks to smartphone penetration, internet penetration, they have awareness and they have aspiration. So affordability has increased, aspiration has increased, access of brands and access of distribution channels has absolutely not caught pace with this, right? So there is
So these are areas where Flipkarts of the world is laundry.
No, so conventional e-com doesn't reach here, largely due to logistical challenges.
Right. And what are the logistical challenges?
And the one big challenge is that there are no proper addresses for people here, right? So
how do you find them?
So you were there, you were living in these villages. Your address actually could be, Rasul, मंदिर के दूसरे गली के पीछे. Right. Actually, those are the
Right.
offices that
Chopal ke samne, right? Or what is right now?
So the reality is it's very tough for conventional e-commerce companies to reach. So conventional GTM doesn't work over here, right? So what Rosanna has a three-pronged strategy.
How are they solving this? The address issue.
Right. So they have a peer partner system,
Okay.
right? Who's a bridge towards getting the consumer to transact fully on e-commerce. These consumers are also not digitally savvy yet. When they have phones and when they're consuming content, they don't do commerce on the phone night.
But so it's a mix of traditional and as well as new tech.
Yeah, it is e-commerce, but it is assisted e-commerce, right? So you'll have a peer partner who's a lady in a village. They can actually work for Rosada and go and talk to households in the villages. And each village has about 500 odd households. Go to households in the village and say, now here is an app. Aap download kijiye. Here's an app. You can see all of this. So she assists them how to do e-commerce. And when inventory comes from the Rosanna warehouses and dark stores, she enables that to get distributed to the right.
So Rosanna, dark stores are just dark stores? Are they also consumer facing?
That's a beautiful thing. So what Rosanna has done very smartly is started converting those dark stores also into what they call lit stores, right? So these are stores that are part DCs,
Right.
and part walk-in stores for people to walk in and experience the assortment. Now, in these towns, there are actually very, very few shops, and all the shops are actually hole-in-the-wall shops.
Right.
So the shopping experience for people who live there is actually pretty terrible. So Rosanna, now these dark stores converted to lit stores are walk-in formats that help consumers get access to different ranges, categories within the same brand variety. So it's giving people, it's actually just bridging the big gap that exists between demand and supply. Right?
One thing I'm curious about, others, is we have seen the ITC, Chopals, Kisan, Haryali Bazaar, or DCM Sur. All of them have folded like hard. What has changed now? How is it a different?
Absolutely. So the two things that have changed massively, one is affordability, right? And the second is aspiration,
Okay.
right?
And the money, right?
Affordability.
What is the purchasing power right now?
You see, on an average, a household in this kind of a market that I'm talking about consumes more than 20,000 rupees worth of goods every month. Wow, that is not small, right? A lot of
And 20,000, and then so many with such a large population, right? Like such a large household. It's like,
now if you just multiply, you can see what the opportunity is, right? Now the important thing is, it's very, very important to identify what they buy, what the aspiration is, and then fill up that.
how is it different? Do they tend to consume slightly cheaper version or smaller version? What are the consumer patterns? Right?
I think the big sort of misconception is everybody who lives in urban India is rich,
Right.
and everybody who lives in rural India is poor.
Yeah.
That's a misconception. Even in rural India, there are affluent households, there are the middle class households, and the not so affluent households. So there's all kinds of people there as well. So there are different consumption.
What are the behavior consuming patterns?
People are very comfortable upgrading. People are very comfortable trying variants, and people are very comfortable.
Do they also experiment?
They are very comfortable experimenting because they have seen ads on Instagram. They have seen somebody would have used something and that would have traveled through WhatsApp. So their aspiration level, to be honest, Russell, is not different from yours or mine. Clearly, affordability is not the same, right? So it's important to have that bridge. Now the reality is, because these markets have been so supply starved, where that sweet spot is, whether it's at $100, whether it's at $500, $750, I think that one has to keep testing. What we've seen is the moment you keep something in front of those consumers, they buy. These markets consume Snickers chocolates. These markets consume Red Bull. It's very interesting how they consume Red Bull. Obviously, Red Bull is an expensive product. And we are talking of, this is a 3,000 population village as an average, right? As a 20-year-old boy, Red Bull is an aspirational brand for me to hold in my hand, right? I might not be able to afford that on my own. So 3 boys together consume 1 can, and it's not so much the consumption, as in, it's not so much the drinking of the liquid. It is actually 3 individually holding the can and taking a photograph. Yeah, because that makes me feel good.
I've also arrived, right?
So that absolutely. So then these are some of the,
And some they're testing it, they're splitting their cost, but eventually they might become a consumer in for sure, right? Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's how a lot of Indians have started, where they started tasting Domino's pizza in a small version, 35 rupees pizza, and then it became snacks, and then it became ultimately it became a meal, right? Like, things could change that way as well. Going back to the consumer segments, like, you are in FMCG, you are in this beauty, you are heavy on this. You are in tech, SaaS, you're in household items. Is there any particular segment you're bullish on?
I think we are bullish on anything to do with the Indian consumer, to be honest, right?
Right.
See, the reality, Rasul, is that the market is now quite clearly segmented, right? If you look at just Gen Z as a market, and I'll just share some numbers to bring the opportunity come alive, right? So today, the Indian consumption sort of dollar value is very different from yours and mine. So they're trend focused, not legacy focused. A serious amount of social
What are they attracted to? Is it social media narration, or like
that is the preferred way to consume content, right? No, that not just consume but even discover content. That is definitely a preferred way to discover content and to consume content, and actually even to choose. They are actually fairly influenced by their inner circle.
So are they fickle? Do they keep changing brands, or they also stick to some brands if they like?
No, I think they stick to causes. Causes, not so much brand. They okay causes. They stick to relate
Causes like what are the causes?
So sustainability is a cause for them.
Okay,
Right? What is relevant for me is a cause for them. Is, so if I'm a Gen Z girl and if I have baby hair, I don't want to use a shampoo that doesn't talk about baby hair, right? So Moxie Beauty, which is one of our, one of our investments, that's a brand that is made targeted towards Gen Z women who had hair that is wavy, curly, frizzy, dry. It's a very specific use case, but a very big use case. And if you think of it 5 years back or 3 years back or 10 years back, it's not that women did not have frizzy hair or dry hair or baby hair in India. There was just no brand. So women have expressed the need that I have this particular requirement. Don't give me a brand that works for everybody.
so both but the consumers and from your own previous company, HUL, okay, Sunsilk, from Sunsilk to Moxie, we have come a long way. Like, addressing the frizzy hair, curly hair, and all those issues. And we have long way to go. Yes. And that's a great addressable market for all of you. On this note, I really thank you, Adarsh. It could have extended for a long period of time, but we don't have the luxury of time. So I have to end the conversation here. Thank you very much, Adarsh, for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.